On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks trading for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Why was it time for the Mavs to move on from Grant Williams just a few months after signing him as their marquee acquisition in the offseason? Why didn't things work out in Dallas for Grant Williams? What do PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford bring to the table for this Mavericks team? Could we possibly be looking at a new starting five for the Dallas Mavericks? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within the first 24 hours. Look, LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Mavericks, Nick Angstadt. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Mavericks. Nick, one of the few teams making a couple moves at this NBA trade deadline. PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford in, Grant Williams, Seth Curry out. Now let's start right there. Why didn't Grant Williams work out in Dallas? Because on paper, Grant Williams seems like he would have been the exact kind of player you want right next to a Luka Doncic.
If you've ever heard the phrase, your mouth is writing a check that your game can't cash, that is the Grant Williams story, because you're right. It should have worked. I was excited for it. I was excited for Grant Williams, but he went from being a 9th, 10th man for the Celtics to being a 4th, 5th man for the Mavericks. That's a big step up. Now, the Celtics have more talent, so you'd think that, all right, well, if he's that far down the pecking order for the Celtics, then he comes over to the Mavericks, it should work, just him being the player that he is. It just didn't work for him. He shot the ball well early on in the season, and then it just kind of went away from him. I think the confidence went away from him a little bit when the shot went away. He's shooting like 60% from three the first month of the season, and we asked him about it, and he said, it's not good enough. I want to shoot 100%. And I feel like since that statement, he was shooting like 28% from three. It just went downhill for him.
Hell of a counter jinx, man.
He just jinxed himself completely. And defensively, the Mavericks have issues, and they needed somebody to just be real solid in that role and to kind of hold their own. And he had to take a step forward, even from the defense that he showed with the Celtics. He's not going to have the same kind of team concept where you're surrounded by literally 4 other solid to good to great defenders. And so that's a big task too. So he wasn't up to it, and he said that he was. The Mavs said that he was. I said that he was. We all were betting and hoping for him to take that step forward. It just didn't happen for him.
Now, Seth Curry also a part of that deal, having a bit of a down season. So a couple players really struggling in Mavericks uniforms. You flip them for PJ Washington. What does PJ Washington bring to this Mavericks team?
PJ Washington is only an inch taller than Grant Williams. So we've seen a lot, like, the Mavs added size. He's only an inch taller, but his wingspan is 7'2", same as Daniel Gafford. Like, they both have 7'2" wingspan. He's bringing that to the table, and he's bringing the ability to, Luka threw him a lob in the first game. I'll just say that. Whereas Grant Williams, you just can't throw him a lob. He couldn't finish around the rim. He would get to the rim and have to do some kind of floater. He just couldn't from a standing position dunk on the rim. That verticality matters a lot, finishing around the rim. And it matters a lot because of the other things we saw PJ Washington do in that Mavs first game. He's going to get a bunch of wide open threes. He's also going to get some semi-contested threes that he can then attack the closeout and go to the basket. And he's either going to have to be able to finish or make the right pass out of it. And he did that a couple times in that first game where he attacked a closeout, finished with a floater. And I just went, oh my God, is this allowed? Are role players allowed to attack closeouts and finish with floaters and like do all? It was just amazing to watch. And that's something that Grant Williams and Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith and like go back through Josh Richardson, like go through all the past 3-and-D quote unquote wings that the Mavericks have had. They just struggle in that area, but Luka and Kyrie get so much attention that driving lane is there for you if you can get there. And so that's something I think he's definitely going to bring to the table that I think is a big step forward.
But so you look at this and you're turning, a couple role players who had been underperforming in Grant Williams and Seth Curry into hopefully PJ Washington, a role player who can maybe fit that, that lane a little bit better, right? Be a bit more of a complementary piece to Luka and Kyrie. But to have to give up that 2027 first round draft pick, you already gave up the 2029 Mavs first in the Kyrie deal. Now you're giving up the 20. Is that a bit of a steep price to pay for maybe not even an upper end role player in PJ Washington?
Hey, you know what? You got to spend money to make money, Jackson. You've got to, all this pearl clutching of like, oh, the first that the Mavericks did. Okay.
Whoa, first, great Sam Presti impersonation. Continue.
Got a first from Sam Presti. Sam Presti's first that the Mavericks got for a pick swap to get Daniel Gafford that we'll talk about. But like, the Maverick, you had to spend to get better. It's like, okay, what's the alternative? All right, you hold on to your precious firsts and you don't get better on Luka. He gets frustrated, then he leaves, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy anyway, where then he just decides, all right, we just don't have enough. You've got to keep taking steps forward when you have a player like this. We don't talk about the first-round picks or draft picks this like with a LeBron team or with like the Warriors or like another team. Why wouldn't we do that with a Luka and Kyrie team? We're like, all right, we got to keep going forward because this is your shot. You've got the two stars together that can make sense, that can do a lot of things, that both have done incredible things in the playoffs. Let's get them there and see what they can do with like a roster that makes sense around them. And this roster is starting to make sense.
Well, so that's a good spot that I want to pick up on because Mavericks are sitting at 8th place in the Western Conference right now, 30-23. Where do these moves? How do these moves move the needle? I should say for the Mavericks, right? Should there be a lot of confidence now that you've plugged up a couple of the holes and the Mavs can really make a push now post All-Star break to hopefully slot into one of those upper tier seeds in the Western Conference rather than fighting for a play-in spot?
The Mavs' biggest issue this season has been health. It just has. You can say it's Jason Kidd. You can say it's the level of talent, all that. Luka, Kyrie, and Derek Lively have played 18 games together. Those are, like, before these trades, I think, were your top 3 players on the roster. Like, if that happened to any other team, they would be in a real bad spot. Zach Lowe had a stat recently on his show that there are only 3 teams in the NBA that have not had a single 5-man unit hit 100 minutes yet. It's the Mavericks, the Hornets, and the Grizzlies. Those are the teams. Then like the Grizzlies,
one of those teams is not like the others.
No, they have a winning record and they're in a position. So health is definitely a huge thing. So what these injuries do is what these trades do is they come in and they stabilize some of that kind of stuff. Missing Derek Lively because he's out for an ankle or he's out for a broken nose that he got popped in the face. All the Mavs centers get popped in the face, by the way. Gafford now stabilizes that, where all of a sudden he comes in and you're not like really struggling for center minutes and trying out the Maxey Dwight Powell combo that they've been trotting out there for like, I don't know, since before you and I started on this network. Like it's just been a long time that they've been throwing those guys out. So they stabilize. And then when the Mavericks can get healthy, hopefully that's the hope, is that then they add to the depth and they add to the versatility of what this team can be.
Last question for you here, Nick. Of all the previous guards in Mavericks history, who's been traded and then brought back more times, Devin Harris or Seth Curry?
Seth Curry has signed with the Mavericks 3 times. So has Devin Harris. Devin Harris has signed 3 times too. Curry has been traded twice now, not 3 times. So he hasn't been I've seen that a lot. Oh, they traded him 3 times. No, one time he signed with the Blazers, so that's one. Devin Harris was traded for Jason Kidd. That was one trade. And as I vamp here, trying to go to his basketball reference page, trying to figure out if he was traded.
Keep vamping.
He was traded again in 2018, part of the weird like Doug McDermott trade that the Mavericks got. They bring in Doug McDermott, and he shot like 50% from 3 the last half of the season. That was a trade deadline deal. But yeah, so they both are tied now.
They're in a dead tie. Wow.
They both signed 3 times. They've both been traded by the Mavericks twice.
Oh, man. Well, what do these deals ultimately mean for the Mavericks? How will PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford be able to help kind of add some depth to this team? And will they be able to make a stronger push post All-Star break? And who's going to ultimately come back to claim the title of the most traded guard in Mavericks history somewhere down the line? You'll have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Mavericks. Nick, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Devin Harris could still be traded as a broadcaster.
Ooh.